Hello, and thank you for joining me. Today, we're returning to Fallout 76, where we're going to spend another 1,000 scrip on 3-star ranged legendary weapons, and as always, I'll take a few moments to talk about each one, about what makes it good, bad, or indifferent. And please remember, if you enjoy content like this, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. It really helps the channel out, and it doesn't cost you anything. Alright, let's go on ahead and get started here. So for our first 3-star ranged legendary weapon today, we get an Executioner short combat rifle with replenishing action points with each kill and 25% less VATS AP cost. So the Executioner's effect is an interesting effect. In the right situation, it's actually one of the best effects. The plus 50% damage that it gives when the target is below 40% health is actually multiplicative, unlike many of the bonuses, pretty much most of the bonuses, I believe, on legendary effects. So that makes it very powerful, because it's actually adding half the damage that you see on your damage card there in those situations. The drawback with the Executioner's effect is that it doesn't do anything until the target gets below 40% health. So that makes it most useful on weapons that fire quickly and have low damage per shot. But the combat rifle, its damage is a little bit lower than the handmade and the fixer, which are the two premier commando weapons. So you might get a little bit more use out of the Executioner's effect on a combat rifle than you would on one of those two weapons. But overall, it's still a pretty solid first star. The replenishing action points with each kill, that's definitely going to be very good on a weapon like this. The commando weapons are all very good for VATS usage, and being able to replenish your action points with every kill allows you to keep using VATS more frequently, which gets you that extra damage from VATS criticals as well as targeting the weak points. So that's going to be very good on this weapon. And then that also synergizes very well with the less VATS AP cost. So overall, this is actually a pretty solid roll. It would have been nice to see it on something a little bit stronger than a combat rifle, like a handmade or a fixer, but really, this is still a pretty solid weapon right here. So this will probably go on my vendor at some point. Let's go on ahead and move on to the next one. Wow. This is a god roll right here. This is actually going to be my new at least boss fighting handmade here. This is a bloodied short handmade with 25% faster fire rate and 15% faster reload. So the bloodied effect is the best damage dealing effect in the game as far as legendary effects go. It is plus 80% damage, I believe, when you're at 20% health, and that stacks as well with the adrenal reaction mutation and nerd rage, which is why the bloody builds are so popular, because they just have so many benefits. The 25% faster fire rate, that is amazing on a weapon like this. It basically just dramatically increases your damage per second, your DPS, and as long as you can keep your target unlocked. Sorry, I'm a little flustered here. I was not expecting this god roll here. But yeah, as long as you can keep your targets being hit effectively, then that 25% faster fire rate is just straight up extra DPS. It doesn't add anything to your damage, but it will bring things down much, much quicker. And then faster reload, well, you're going to be reloading this thing a lot faster, or a lot more frequently, because of the faster fire rate. So the faster reload is definitely going to help with that. The 25% less VATS AP cost would have potentially been a slightly better third star, but I'm not complaining one little bit. This is an amazing roll right here, so thank you very much, Murmur. Yeah, I will definitely be putting this one to use. I actually prefer the handmade to the fixer, primarily because its recoil is much, much lower. So, you know, also it is a little bit easier to keep fed. 5.56 ammo, you craft more of it than you do 45, and you get a lot more of it from the ammo creation machine. So anyway, yeah, this is a very good roll. Definitely the highlight. I suspect it's probably all downhill from here, but let's go on ahead and keep going. And here we've got an anti-armor pipe revolver with plus 50% limb damage and plus 50 damage resistance while aiming. So, as pipe revolvers go, this isn't necessarily the worst, but it is a pipe revolver. The most I can really say about the pipe revolver is that it is the one revolver in the game that you can put a suppressor on. That makes it potentially better than a lot of the other revolvers. But revolvers are probably not the best weapon in the game, but the anti-armor effect on it is going to let it hit that much harder, so there is something to be said for that. The plus 50% limb damage, that's not really the best effect for a weapon like this. You're going to get a lot more use out of it on a weapon that fires faster and typically does less damage per shot. This weapon, you will see some benefit from it, but because you're typically going to have to put several shots on a target before they go down, but at the same time, you're probably going to be using VATS with a pistol like this, so you're typically going to be aiming for the weak points, which means the limb damage isn't really going to be doing a whole lot for you because you're probably going to be crippling their head or whatever, which in my experience doesn't seem to slow them down all that much. The plus 50 damage resistance while aiming, that is not one of my favorite third stars. It does what it says, and if you're the type of player who does not like VATS and prefers to aim down sights, then that's going to be a very good effect for you because it's basically just 50 free damage resistance if you do a lot of aiming. But I'm more of a VATS player, so it doesn't do a whole lot for me. So anyway, let's go on ahead and move on to the next one. And here we've got a Medic's Hellstorm missile launcher with bashing damage increased by 50% and plus 50 damage resistance while aiming. So the Hellstorm missile launcher is an interesting weapon in that it is actually, in my opinion anyway, a little bit better than the basic missile launcher because you can fire a little bit more frequently, and overall it does about the same damage. So I'd have to check the two. I'm not sure which one actually does more. It might be the standard missile launcher that does more per shot, but they all hit hard, and if you've got the Demolition Expert maxed out, which you really should be if you're going to be running around with a missile launcher, then they're all going to do pretty good damage, at least against your typical run-of-the-mill enemies. The Vast Critical, the Medic's effect, the Vast Critical hits healing you and your group, is probably not, actually it's definitely not the best effect for a weapon like this. The drawback for using a launcher weapon in VATS is that if you miss your target, your projectile just kind of goes off into nothingness. It vanishes. So you don't get that explosion and that damage. So there's definitely something to be said, even though they're more accurate in VATS, there's certainly something to be said for just free aiming your launcher weapons, because even if you miss, you're at least going to get some splash damage on your target, typically if you get it somewhere in the ballpark. Which really, hurts the Medic's effect. So the second effect, the bashing damage increased by 50%, that is one of my least favorite second stars. It has pretty much one use case, and that is with the minigun with the Shredder mod. In that case, it's very powerful and makes the weapon into a very, very good weapon, melee weapon basically. But in pretty much every other situation, it's just not doing much for you. So it's kind of like not having a second legendary effect at all. And then the third star, the plus 50 damage resistance while aiming, that's pretty much the same as it was on the pipe revolver. It's useful. On a weapon like this, you might really want to be aiming down sights, like I said, because of losing a projectile if you miss in VATS. But, overall, this one's not an exciting roll. Let's go on ahead and move on to the next one. And here we've got a Mutant Slayer's Gauss Shotgun with 25% faster fire rate and plus 1 perception. So the Gauss Shotgun is a very hard-hitting weapon, but at the same time it's not really the kind of weapon I want to see come up on a pull from Murmur, because you can craft them pretty easily. But at the same, and you cannot trade them. That's the big thing. And this character is not a shotgun character. So the Mutant Slayer's effect is one of the Slayer's effects. They all give plus 50% damage. It's base damage of the weapon, unlike the Executioner's effect like we talked about earlier. But it's still a pretty solid effect. And super mutants are one of the types of enemies that you can pretty much count on seeing on a pretty regular basis. You will see them down at West Tech, sometimes I believe in Daily Ops. So yeah, there's definitely times when you know you'll be fighting super mutants, so you can get some benefit out of that. The 25% faster fire rate, unfortunately, is a lost effect on the Gauss shotgun. It may allow you to actually spam the trigger a little bit faster, which even just spamming the trigger on the Gauss shotgun will get you some pretty decent damage, but you know, it's pretty much a matter of how quickly can you pull the trigger, because it's not an automatic weapon. There's no way to mod it to be automatic. So it's more or less a lost effect. It does not help the weapon charge up faster. The +1 perception, that's a pretty solid effect on the Gauss shotgun because it is very good in VATS, and the +1 perception gives you some extra VATS accuracy. But overall, on this particular Gauss shotgun, it's not doing a whole lot. So this one's, again, not exciting. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Alright, and this time we got a Lux Combat Shotgun with plus 50% limb damage, and hits have a chance to generate a stealth field. So, the Zealot's effect is another one of the Assassin's effects with the plus 50% base damage of the weapon, but it's probably overall a little bit less useful, in my opinion quite a bit less useful really, than the the Mutant Slayer's effect, simply because the Scorched go down pretty quickly and easily, even with a non-legendary weapon typically. So you don't really need a whole lot of help to bring down a Scorched quickly. In fact, while hunting Holiday Scorched with my friend, I switched over to a non-legendary handmade just so that I wouldn't be killing the Scorched in one shot, and I still had to do things like target the legs or run up and bash them to avoid doing that. So, anyway. And yeah, this was for the daily and weekly challenges of killing that many, not for looting them. We're aware that you don't have to even land a shot on them to loot them anymore, thanks to legendary looting. But then the second effect, the plus 50% limb damage, that's kind of lost on a shotgun overall, really any shotgun, because if you're a shotgun build, you really should be running at least 1 or 2 ranks of the Executioner's effect, and there's, in my opinion, no reason not to run all 3, because if you do that, you will be crippling things most of the time with one shot anyway, with a non-legendary shotgun. So, in that case, the plus 50% limb damage is just doing nothing for you. So, really for shotguns, it's kind of like not having a second legendary effect at all, unfortunately. The hits having a chance to generate a stealth field, well, a combat shotgun, you can put a suppressor on. So, you can use this as a stealth weapon, and that means that you can get a little bit of benefit to your stealth with this weapon. I don't know that you really need it if you've built your stealth build correctly and running either a set of chameleon armor if you're full health or unyielding armor if you're low health. You probably shouldn't have a lot of trouble staying in stealth, but if you do, that could add a little bit of utility for you, but otherwise I don't see it doing a whole lot. So anyway, let's go on ahead and move on to the next one. And here we've got a Berserker's Gatling Laser with plus 50% VATS hit chance and 25% less VATS AP cost. So the Berserker's effect is one of the less desirable effects in general, just because it's a lot harder to stay alive with no armor than it is to stay alive at low health. There are many perks, and you still get all your armor and all of that to help you stay alive when you're at low health, but when you're at low armor, you just kind of die pretty quickly. And that means that when it is desirable, somebody is trying to run a Berserker's build, and I know that there are some people out there who do that, the loud Gatling Laser is probably not the weapon you want, and even if it is, you're probably going to prefer an Ultrasight Gatling Laser over a regular Gatling Laser for that boost in damage. So, overall, the first star and the weapon itself are both a bit of a loser here. The plus 50% VATS hit chance is one of my very favorite effects in the game, but this weapon is really not the weapon you want it on. If you look at the fire rate of 182 over here, the weapon is just going to fire so quickly that it doesn't matter how high your AP pool is, it's going to chew through it very, very quickly and leave you with no AP to fire it in VATS. Now you could certainly, use that plus 50% VATS hit chance to open fights and things like that, and, if that works for you, so be it. But I really think that even in that case, you're probably better off with a better second star, like 25% faster fire rate, for example. But to each their own there. And then the 25% less VATS AP cost, that does synergize very well with the second star. But again, just because of this super fast fire rate here, even with the less VATS AP cost per shot, I just don't see anybody being able to keep their AP bar full while using a weapon like this in VATS. So let's go on ahead and move on to the next one. And here we've got an Exterminator short hunting rifle with bashing damage increased by 50% and plus 50 damage resistance while aiming. So the Exterminator's effect is another one of the Slayer's effects, giving plus 50% of the weapon's base damage, this time to Mirelurks and bugs. And it's probably the worst, or at least tied for the worst of those effects, simply because there's not really any time in the game that I can think of that you're really going to be out there actively hunting Mirelurks and bugs. There is a time when, if you're still grinding out reputation for Crater, you may be trying to kill a Mirelurk Queen every day just so that you can take some meat down to the raiders at Ohio River Adventures, and it might provide you some utility then, but I don't really think it's worth keeping a separate weapon around specifically for that. The second star, bashing damage increased by 50%, well, we talked about that earlier. This is not a minigun, so basically it doesn't have a second star. So, moving on to the third one, the plus 50 damage resistance while aiming. The hunting rifle is really one of the better sniper type rifles in the game. You definitely mod it out to basically be the sniper rifle of the game. And so, if you're into free aiming, then that could definitely be useful. Although, typically, with a sniper rifle, you're trying to do so from stealth, and the enemies aren't going to know where you are, so that plus 50 damage resistance while aiming is not necessarily going to do a whole lot for you then. Although, it might help you a little bit to get yourself out of a bad situation, but really, if you find yourself being overwhelmed while wielding a hunting rifle, your best choice is to either withdraw or switch to a better weapon, or at least a faster firing weapon. That's my opinion anyway. So let's go on ahead and move on to the next one. And here we've got a quad combat shotgun with the last round in the magazine having a 25% chance to deal double damage and plus 50 damage resistance while aiming. They're really loving that third star today. So anyway, the quad is actually one of the best effects in the game for the first star. And on the combat shotgun, it's actually very good just because it changes the ammo capacity at basic for the combat shotgun from 8 to 32. That's a big difference there. It's actually quite possible in many situations to find yourself having to reload in the middle of battle just because your 8 rounds are insufficient to complete the job. With a quad, you probably won't have that problem. I don't know that the quad effect is the best effect for a shotgun. It is the best effect for some weapons, in my opinion, such as, for example, the Tesla rifle. But a combat shotgun, it's still a very solid effect on almost any weapon. The second star, the last round in a magazine having 25% chance to deal double damage. Well, if you've seen any of my videos at all, I always seem to get that on at least one weapon, and you know that I am not a fan of that weapon, or of that effect at all. Especially with quad here. In this case, you'd have to fire all 32 shots from your magazine before you have a 25% chance to get that double damage. Just very much not worth it, basically like not having a second legendary effect at all. The plus 50 damage resistance while aiming, well, I'm not going to beat that one into the ground. It's potentially useful. Shotguns can definitely be free aimed, really anything can be. Shotguns are also very good in VAT, so it really matters more about your personal playstyle than the weapon itself, whether that's going to be good for you. So let's go on ahead and move on to our last one for the day here. Can we end on a high note? Yes, we can. I don't know if this one's quite a god roll, but this one is a very solid roll right here. We have a Junkie Short Flamer with 25% faster fire rate and faster movement speed while aiming. So the Junkie's effect is one of the most powerful of the full health build effects. It gives you 10% damage bonus per addiction that you're suffering from, up to a maximum of 5, so it'll give you plus 50% damage. That and the Aristocrats effect, which is plus 50% damage over when you have 29,000 caps or more, are the two most powerful full health damage buffs from legendary effects. So that makes it very good right there. The 25% faster fire rate, that's just really one of the best second stars in the game for ranged weapons. On a heavy gun like a flamer, it just means you're going to melt things that much quicker. The faster movement speed while aiming, that is what probably holds this one back from being a true god roll. I don't think anyone's really looking for the faster movement speed while aiming effect. In fact, if you're running the Speed Demon mutation, like I believe most late game players will be, then it does absolutely nothing for you. But even if you're not running that mutation, I just don't see players doing a whole lot of running around the battlefield while holding the aim button down. So overall, the third effect is kind of disappointing, but the first and second stars are very good, and this one will probably end up on my vendor. So overall, today was a very, very lucky day with the vendor, or with the purveyors, so I am very pleased, and I am very grateful to all of you for joining me, and I will talk to you all next week.